Welcome back to part two of the January/February deep dive of the Luton Town Supporters Trust podcast. If you haven't listened to part one, that's where we've looked at all of the incomings in January. And after this intro, we'll look at the players that have left us and plenty more topics beside.
I believe our supporters are the best supporters in the country.
I love this town. I love this town. I love this town. You know what I love about this town is actually you. Everyone in it has got these massive souls.
We're Luton people, and that's what we care about.
Okay, as I said before the intro, we are going to look at the players that have left us in January, so in particular the most recent ones. We'll get your comments that we've asked you questions for on social media, and we'll answer a couple of your comments and questions, and we'll speak to Tony about his upcoming departure from the Trust. And alongside me, I've got the Lutonian journalist James Cunliffe and the aforementioned Tony Murray. Let's look at outgoings, because with everyone that come in, someone had to leave because we're at maximum potential. I'm not going to go through all the ones that have left. Well, you know, people like Eric Peters, there's no point going through there. We never saw him. He was literally there to fill a hole for a month. That was a busy period of time. But in particular, some key players have left recently, or not key players, but key characters, particularly on deadline day. We'll come on to the biggest one last. Let's start with Tom Holmes. I don't think it was too much of a surprise that Tom Holmes has left for a couple of reasons, Tony. The first one being that he wasn't even in the squad on Saturday. Cal Naismith's come in, so we had another defender. We're kind of getting more and more hints that Ted Mengi and Reece Burke are starting to resume training. Reece Burke in particular, much closer than Ted and Mengi. That's automatically 5 centre-halves without Tom Holmes, if you include Madsen, Mark McGuinness, who played on Saturday. Amari Bell's swimming around the waters as well, so that's 6. Someone clearly had to go from that area. Tom Holmes didn't cover himself in glory at Oxford, it's fair to say. I have to say I didn't expect him popping up in Belgium for the rest of the season, but fair play to him. He tried hard, but ultimately, if we're going to go where we want to go, maybe he wasn't the one to take us there.
No, and I'm trying to be fair to the guy. I mean, you can't say that he didn't put the effort in. He tried really hard, and again, as you say, popping up in Belgium was quite a surprise. I think, in a way, that the timing was quite unfortunate for him in the fact that a new manager comes in, and then he has a bit of a nightmare, and as you said, the game in Oxford, and he's given his best to us, and I wish him well. I hope he's a success, and it's a loan deal. You never know. If he does well in Belgium, he might find himself back here in the summer. So you just don't know. But I hope it works out for him, and he continues to improve, and he puts the Oxford game behind him. He's a character, and I don't think he'll let it get to him, and we'll just put it behind him and learn from it.
Yeah, there were good signs, Jimbo, but they just didn't come often enough.
There were good signs, and from like his first couple of performances, and we spoke about it on here, didn't we? So his no nonsense style of defending, and actually he did look to try and nip in front of strikers and take the ball off them and stuff like that. And in his early couple of games was trying to get forward with the ball as well, all promising signs. But I think that he just wasn't meant to be in that position. He was signed and obviously loaned back to Reading when Luton had a load of central defenders, and they were dropping like flies at the time anyway. I mean, they have been for a year. But even when he comes back this season, and all of the central defenders would probably be ahead of him. I think he would have been way down in the pecking order, probably last, and not no disservice to him, just the talents of the rest of the central defenders that they had. So he probably was never expected to be there. I think he's made 20 appearances. I don't think he would have been expected by anyone at the club to be doing that. So yeah, it's disappointing for him, but maybe it could be the making of him. There's a hell of a lot of English players now going abroad, and it's remarkable that it's taken until like the last 5 years for that to be a really consistent thing. But I didn't think he'd go to a Belgian side, so I hope he goes out there and gets some culture and enjoys his French fries with mayonnaise on it and his 12% Belgian beer when he's not playing, and he comes back a better, more cultured player.
And chocolate, yeah, Belgian chocolate. Get as much of that down your neck, Tom, as you can as well. Well recommended. Yeah, best of luck to him. And of course, we're going to have to assess the centre-back situation in the summer anyway, because we'll know definitively where Tom Lockyer is. We'll know exactly what Cal Naismith's up to. One or two others that we may or may not want to go forward with in that position as well, based on their age too. Based on his age, Corley Woodrow probably didn't have too much longer left at Luton. But then once Tello Asgard came in, we believe that, I mean, even people like Josh Bowler can play in that 10 position as well. The writing was kind of on the wall. There has been rumours for the last couple of weeks that Wrexham were interested in him. They signed Jay Rodriguez from Burnley, of all players, but he still managed to find a move on deadline day, Corley Woodrow. He swapped a relegation battle for a promotion battle in the same division. Gone to Blackburn for the rest of the season. In March, they play the 4 teams immediately above us, one after the other in the table. So if they can get him up to speed in the next month, he could be seriously useful for Luton still.
Agent Woodrow. Come to think of it, his agent has done the best deal of this championship transfer window, I'd imagine, swapping relegation for a promotion battle. Fair play to him. I mean, he's got a lot of composition. They signed Emmanuel Dennis as well on transfer deadline.
So there ain't much competition there then, is there?
But it depends when they're going to play him, doesn't it? I mean, Emmanuel Dennis is probably more of a target man, whereas Corley Woodrow has never been that player. But I don't. He got a lot of stick unnecessarily. I think it was always looped into the Joe Taylor situation because they always saw Corley coming on in front of Joe Taylor. And we've done that one to death because Corley Woodrow has scored goals at championship level and Joe Taylor still hasn't. So that was the reason, as much as people didn't like it. But his time has been limited for some seasons now, and he's a Luton. He's been brought up at Luton, hasn't he? In Luton.
What you're trying to say is he's one of our own, isn't he?
That's it. Yeah. He's one of our own. So it is sad in that regard because, you don't come back to the club and say the things he did at the time he come back if he didn't want to and he didn't love the club. And so it's a shame when that ends because, he's gone on loan, although there was a talk of it being a permanent deal earlier in the transfer deadline day. And some people say, well, he could go there, really perform well and come back. I think what you're seeing with the loan players essentially is this is the long goodbye and they'll go there and you won't see them in a Luton shirt again. So obviously he goes with everyone's best wishes and always have the Norwich goal.
I think he's been like the consummate professional for us. He hasn't let us down. He did everything that was asked of him. A few times he's come on and he hasn't played in his favoured position, which is really as a number 10 or an out-and-out striker. He's had to drop into midfield and play there. He's still a very good player.
He's one of the technically better forward players. It just wasn't. They never found a niche for him in the formations, and there's been a couple.
He scored some good goals for us as well, and I wish him all the best. Good luck at Blackburn. And it probably didn't work out at Luton as well as he might, but as far as I'm concerned, whenever he comes back to Kenilworth Road, he should get a warm welcome because he's one of our own.
He is indeed, yeah. Obviously won't be allowed to play for Blackburn in that fixture against us in April, but if he does the business in the month prior to that, happy days, because as I say, they do play the 4 teams immediately above us in the table, one after the other, either side of that March international break. I know this because one of my mates is a Blackburn fan, so...
I would imagine that he'd want to help
absolutely,
our football club out and help to keep us in the championship, and good on him if he does. Yeah,
indeed, yeah. Whatever happens, he'll always be a part of the squad that took us to the Premier League, and it shouldn't be forgotten. Not necessarily his fault that he didn't have the impact that he didn't have, Nathan signed him as a marquee signing, and then before he even had a chance to play a game of football, he signed his mate Carlton Morris, who was always going to be more suited to that role in the Championship. Hey, that it is what it is. But yeah, wish Corley all the very best. Like Tony said, never kicked up a fuss, even though he was out of the team. Trained hard, strong part of the squad, did his thing when he came on. Didn't get as much game time as he liked, but that's football.
He scored a couple of really good last-minute goals for us. The goal at Crystal Palace and the goal at Everton in the Cup. Highly enjoyable goals, and ultimately it wasn't enough to keep us up. But and as far as I'm aware, Corley's a decent guy.
Yep, absolutely. Another decent guy. It's hard, isn't it, this one? This one is hard as a Luton fan, and I think you all know where I'm going with this one. It was always going to be a sad day, and the day was always coming ever closer. But it's like, when it actually comes and you see it in black and white, and, it does leave a sort of sad taste in the mouth a little bit, doesn't it? Pelly-Ruddock and Panzu is left on loan for Rotherham till the end of the season. If you read the statement on the club website, he's played his last game for Luton Town. I think that much is clear. The good thing is there's a strong hint, like we said in the last podcast, that he's going to have some sort of testimonial upon his return at the end of the season, which is right. No person in Luton Town recent history has deserved it more than Pelly-Ruddock. Whatever it is that happens, it is deserved. And it's still hard though, isn't it? Because this guy's the only constant on this podcast in the 8 years that we've been doing it. I think James Shea joined later into the season that we first started doing it. He's been on the field all of the time, and we all know about his character and everything else, and his goals and his journey and his story and everything else. But all good things come to an end, and it's come to an end. He's gone to Rotherham, and he definitely goes with our very, very, very best wishes.
Wasn't a surprise that he left. I think the surprise was the club that he went to, because we all thought, if he leaves, he'll go to Charlton because of Nathan. But I think he'll do a good job at Rotherham. I mean, because of sort of personal things, I've got two really good friends up in Yorkshire who are both Rotherham United fans, and when this had broke and whatever, I had messages from them, and one of them in particular was telling me that they're struggling at the moment in Rotherham, and they've sold players and they've not replaced them, and they've got a lot of youth that's turning out for them, and they desperately need some experience. And I said to both of them, really and honestly, you couldn't want somebody better, because he will put a shift in. He's basically a central defensive midfield player, but I said he will break forward with the ball. I sent a message saying, and he'll hit a few bangers for you. Bangers? What's a banger? That's what Pelly calls it when he has a long distance shot and he scores. But they're really pleased that they've got him, and I said, you'll find with Pelly, it's not just what he does on the pitch, it's what he does off the pitch as well. I said, he's a very funny bloke. He's a real character. He doesn't let, anything get him down. He's always got a smile and a good word to say about people. And I said, he will raise your dressing room and be so good, for those young players, and they're coming back. That's great and brilliant. And knowing Rotherham United as I do, and the supporters there, I think it's a good club for him. I have my doubts about the manager there, but again, in an ideal world, I mean, I know they've said about him coming back for another game, which is obviously testimonial. In an ideal world, that testimonial would be the first game at Power Court. It's not going to work out like that, is it? But I hope when the testimonial game is arranged for him. I hope Luton Town supporters turn out in their thousands for him to say thank you for him, because he's been a magnificent servant for this club.
Yeah, they should be able to sell that out 3 times over. It's going to be bloody weird seeing him in a red shirt rather than an orange one, though, isn't it?
Yeah.
That's the thing I'm dreading, because just on the transfer deadline day, when I saw it written down that he was going, even though we spoke about it beforehand, I knew logically, and I've known it for a season, that Pelly-Ruddock and Panzu was gradually going to be leaving Luton. When it was written down, the logical part of my brain went away. It went missing, and it was just a sucker punch to the gut. I was like, this is not right. He's part of the
turned into a Wickham fan. Is that what you're saying?
Some would say that part of your brain's permanently missing. Not me, of course, but some would.
Well, yeah, you could do. But he's just part of the furniture, isn't he? And he's been here for so long.
Yeah.
A history-making player. I said in the last one, he's a legend at this club. And to see that he's gone, you always know in football that nothing lasts forever. But when it's been that long, he's in his 11th year at the club now. It was a sickener. I'm not going to lie to you. It was an absolute sickener. I think it was probably the same for lots of other people. And I've resisted looking online, because the minute I see him in a Rotherham shirt, it's going to be worse than just seeing the words he's gone on loan to Rotherham.
It's not going to be right, is it?
No.
The only thing that I was disappointed about with Pelly, and it's not his fault at all. He's played in all top 5 divisions for us, the first player to ever do that. And it would have been so nice if he'd managed to score for us in the Premier League.
Yeah.
But that didn't happen, unfortunately. But he will be missed. He's a big miss for Luton fans. So, it is a sad time.
The thing is it is definitively now, it feels like an end of an era. Because you could say that all the time when Hilton went, Berry went, even though he didn't play a lot, Potts went. But this one feels like that's the end of the era. And we're talking at the beginning of this podcast, like this transfer window feels like a rebuild, and it is. But when Pelly goes, you're like, that's the connection to those lower league days. That's done now. That's gone. I know we've got James Shea there, but it's not quite the same. It doesn't feel like the same, even though he's a great guy. But
he's the last one from the conference team, isn't he? So, that's such a... But like you're saying, James, it's happened before. I mean, I know with my family, when the likes of Wally Shanks, Gordon Turner left, and then coming back nearer these times, Ricky Hill, Brian Steen, that it happens all the time in football, and somebody else will come to the fore or be a Luton legend, and in the future they'll have the feelings that we've got at the moment.
Yeah, you just need. There's no sort of. I don't know if there's any heir apparent at the moment. Is there?
No, I mean it's there for Fanning to step up to the plate, isn't it? Obviously, different characters completely, but
just across the park, anywhere in the squad, there's some good players, and obviously players that were well loved but have been struggling because the team's been struggling. So I don't think there's the legend that comes in, for instance, like when, say, for Liverpool, when Steven Gerrard left, then you had Trent Alexander-Arnold come in as like one of their own player, doesn't it? But not that it would have been Corley for us, but one of your own goes, and so also Pelly goes as well.
You're looking at Zach, aren't you, for that? And he could come on, and it might have been that keeping Pelly would have held Zach back a little bit anyway. So yeah, listen, it's sad. It's also a sign of the progression that the club are going to make again, that we've rectified that, or realised, that era is coming to an end, and we've got to rebuild again. And if we're going to go back to where we all want to be, back in the Premier League, then a new, fresh impetus is going to have to take us there, on and off the pitch, obviously, with Matt Bloomfield coming in. And that's how it is, yeah. But absolutely, no doubt, Pelly-Ruddock and Panzu will always, always be welcome at Kenilworth Road, Power Court, and wherever else Luton play in the future. And yeah, heroes welcome will come his way when that testimonial comes. That is for sure.
It kind of feels like, I mean,
It's close of a chapter, isn't it?
Yeah.
Mm.
I'm down at the training ground a fair bit, and you always hear him.
Yeah,
Just
there won't be
feels
no
like
180s or anything else shouted in the background. You might have a
Yeah.
quiet press conference now. You might actually be able to hear what Matt Bloomfield says.
But in a way, it kind of feels like that era of camaraderie has got. They always say it's about Luton. They're always a together bunch and stuff. So they'll probably be okay.
There are other
They're going to
jokers
be
in the
okay,
pack, aren't
but
there?
it feels like that off the pitch fun
They won't.
goes. You know,
Oh, sorry, Jim.
No one's going to turn up as a delivery driver because Pelly's made them or anything like that.
Yeah.
There's not going to be no purple suits.
Well, they won't need that particular interpreter anymore, will they?
It's yeah, it is. It's an end of an era. It is a sad day, but it's also a positive day because we've now, we're looking to the future, and as we should do. And as I say, if we can navigate these 16 games in the way that we want them to, the future looks very much bright. Are you more confident of those 60? Actually, I'll come to you, Tony, because James said this in the last podcast, so we'd just be repeating himself. Are you more confident on February the 4th that Luton stay in the Championship than you were on January the 1st?
Yes, I am. And I don't mean that as any disrespect or reflection on the players that are leaving the club. I think the players that are coming in are overall probably younger and hungrier. And exciting, to be honest with you, as I alluded to playing at Hillsborough earlier and watching Asgard, who looked very good. But I was also impressed by Ali coming on. I thought for a long time we hadn't had that dynamism on the flank where he got the ball and straight away he was looking to drive through onto that side of the penalty area and directly take people on and beat them for pace. And I think that looks good. I always had a sneaking suspicion that perhaps, we will get out of it. We won't go down, but I'm far more confident of that now. It's going to take some time for everything to gel and work properly, but that first half on Saturday was the best we've played for a while, and it's only going to get better. The only negative I can see is, are we going to run out of games? But if they've got time now on the training pitch to get it together, and yes, we're all worried about Tuesday's night game against Sunderland, but I've a sneaking suspicion that it'll go a lot better than we think. They've stopped the rot. We've got a point away from home. I was deeply, I obviously wasn't in your last podcast, but I'm confident and optimistic, and I think we'll be in the Championship next season.
Yeah, no, that's fair enough. I put those questions to you guys via social media earlier, and lots of people have come back to us. And I'll just read through a few of the messages that we've received and go from there. So Andy Watts, I think we have enough to stay up. We just need the new signings to bed in and gel with the players and manager. I would have liked to have seen two fullbacks, as there is a risk we keep playing Walters and Johnson, whose inexperience showed on Saturday. I'll get the boys' thoughts on what we could have signed shortly. Richard Bowen, we've refreshed the squad to suit the new manager more, which is good. Hopefully we'll see a more fluent in-attack Luton. Happy with Naismith coming in as a leader. I'm concerned that we've taken a punt that players will come back from injury and stay fit, especially in central midfield and defence. He would like to know if we think we've signed enough experience in this window given where we are in the table. Again, I'll get the boys' thoughts on that in a moment. Mark Burton, suspect there could have been a right back or central midfielder coming if West Brom had sold Fellows to Everton and they were to buy Eli, but that was all speculation. You're right. Larrick, if the squad were playing at their potential, we'd be in the top six easily. Obviously, they've not and still are short on confidence. So in some cases, any change can be good change. Hopefully, they've signed those with strong mental attributes that will flow to those left and will be okay. PR, again, much on the theme that we've had so far. Some experience right back central midfielders would have been ideal. But he also adds some creativity from Tello Asgard is very welcome, and Cal Naismith can bring leadership along the way. Another one, Steve Young feels we're light at right back. Very much a common theme, this, something we mentioned in the last podcast. Bernie Ellis is happy. A complete overhaul isn't possible in the January window. You're quite right, Bernie. That's for the summer, but the additions have given us more flexibility to play Matt Bloomfield's style and more of an attacking threat. And just the last few, Paul Wright, definitely more confident than he was at the start of the month. I think we're all echoing that. Worried by the lack of midfield options and injury-prone defenders. We'll come on to that injury-prone defenders in a minute because someone's asked us about that as well. But we should create far more now, which I think we would all agree with. LTFC Dave, slightly worried we've left ourselves short defensively, again a regular theme, but can't accuse the board of not backing Bloomfield. Nearly 15 million spent without recouping anything. Just hope it pays off now. And Chris Mitchell's very much on that latter theme as well. Got to credit the board for splashing the cash. Some good signings, and in Asgard and Nordas we have some serious young talent. Feels we're light in central midfield, which is fair enough. Hopefully Fanny and Nakamba can stay fit, and that'll be fine. Over to Matt Bloomfield and the players to deliver on the park. And last one, Ian Stacey. Happy enough, good freshen up of the squad and better than the two previous windows. Another theme of a lot of comments that come through. In hindsight, more of a rebuild should have happened in the summer. Well, we can't do nothing about that now, but you're right. Still light central midfield, weak at right back. These are things that only presented themselves in the last few days, though, really, didn't they? So, we can't really go in too much on the board for that. But we're spending plenty of £1 million plus players these days. Will be good for us to discuss how many of those were hits. We'll do that in the next international break, if that's all right with you, Ian, because some of them are still really, really new to the club. To talk about them now would be wrong, but by the next international break, we'll probably get 7 or 8 sort of more games of sort of being able to judge them on that. So we'll save that one for then. Common theme though, light at right back, light at central midfield. I definitely agree at right back, but again, I should just stress it's only become apparent probably at Oxford and at Sheffield Wednesday. I think most people were okay, not absolutely fine with Hashi and Waters at right back, but there were more urgent pressing areas of need which we've rectified as opposed to right back. But you would imagine in the summer, the first signing we make, if Waters hasn't improved like we think he's going to, that will be the first port of call.
Yeah, I agree on the right back. It does look light, but hopefully there's some flexibility there with some of the other players. It would be a bit more of a square pegs round hole situation. But with the central midfield one, I can understand where people are coming from, and I thought that. So I asked Matt Bloomfield in the last press conference about it, because what Krause offered in particular, and I think you highlighted as well, is the leading player for interceptions in the opposition's first third, and all the good work that he did in the press. So there was that. But we hadn't had Lamine Fana play really. He played his first 90 minutes were at the weekend, and the other 2 games, and then a big break because he got injured. So whether he was signed for that reason and to come in, and does that mean that the loss of Tom Krause isn't felt so keenly because Lamine's in? And the simple answer was, yeah, pretty much. If they were gonna try and do some business, but if they couldn't, which they haven't, he was comfortable with that. So we'll wait and see on that one. But I think there's some options there to make up for the loss of Krause. And we didn't have Tello Asgard at the point either as well. So, whatever he can come and do as well, in particularly in that top area where Krause operated, although you'd expect from his record Tello would pitch in with a few more goals. So that central midfield area, I'm more comfortable with, but the right back one, yeah, there's some work to do there. But then again, Walters had been out with a broken foot for a while, and he was playing on it for a while as well. And the period before that, Luton weren't playing well, and they were losing, and so there's all of that stuff to contend with. The players that they brought in and the players that played at the weekend, all 4 of them, haven't got the baggage and the scars of what's happened this season to Luton. And even that Cal Naismith coming back, he's got the memories of good times at Luton. He was in a team that was going for promotion out of this league. So the 4 that came back have that. The players that they've signed since on either side, Isaiah Jones wasn't there. he was playing in a decent Middlesbrough side, although not regularly this season. So they haven't got any of that, those battle scars really. And even when you look at Lasse, he's come from a side that have just beaten relegation in Norway. So I think that there's an element of that, the mental fragility that has been a key part of this season, almost like a slate wiped clean on that potentially, because the amount of players that have come in and can just affect it positively.
Would you have liked to have seen more experience come in though, Tony, as one of those comments referenced?
You always do. You always do. You always feel that, as was mentioned earlier, you can add better players. You can, and no matter how many he's added, it's usually not enough for supporters. I think if you look at what's there, you've got to remember with Will Walters, he's still very young, and he was very, very highly rated at Arsenal, so he's still learning his trade. And
this is his first time in men's football, isn't it? He was academy player before that. So
yeah. So you've got to give him some slack there. I think with Hashioka, it was unfortunate when he joined the club that we had the injury crisis, and it meant him playing most of his football in a position that he wasn't really familiar with. And in the games I've seen him where he's been more right back or right wing back, I think he's done okay. And again, he's got to learn to integrate more into the side with that. A central midfield player, we've got enough there. I mean, Nakamba is getting back to his best now and has looked good.
I think the worry that people have in central midfield is the injury proneness of some of them. So obviously,
I was just going to come on to that.
Yeah, we've still got that. Who knows where Shandon Baptiste is, but he's nowhere near the team at the moment. Liam Walsh, not so much injury.
I was going to say Liam Walsh because he's been forgotten in all of this.
One dodgy tackle away from missing another third of the season, which would be the concern there. However, that's three. But then on the flip side of that, Lamine Fanez seems to be okay. That was just a nasty tackle at Notts Forest that forced him out of that game. That's not a muscle injury like we've been picking up all of the time. And then you've got Jordan Clark, you've got Tello Asgard, and then you've got Tahith Chong to come back at some point who can play central midfield. You've got Zach Nelson who can play central midfield. And then there's still people like Bowler who can play centrally. You could even put Alfie in there as an 8 as well if you can get the left back sorted. Cal Naismith himself can go into central midfield as a stopgap too. So in terms of numbers, I think we are okay in central midfield. The question mark would be whether we can keep them fit. We're going to come on to fitness in a minute because quite a few people, when we first mentioned about doing this deep dive, have spoken about injuries, so we will come on to that. But numerically, we're okay in midfield, aren't we?
I mean, it's something that obviously Matty Bloomfield is obviously looking at, and he's coming fresh ideas and new ways of looking at things, and I'm sure he'll identify if there's any issues on the training front that may be contributing to these injuries. There certainly appears to be something there in the background because it's been too easy. Yes, I mean we've had the usual phrase is made of glass, and you look at Burke. Now I think Burke is by far our best defender, and it's just his injury record. I mean, if he didn't have that injury record, he wouldn't be playing for us. He'd be playing in the Premier League. So, I think it's about putting in the best systems and making sure that it's tailor-made for these players. Now, I'm not knocking the previous regime at all, but sometimes it's what they say: a change is as good as a rest.
There's two players to every position that we have in the squad, and I think that's all that we can ask. And you've got a couple of people in that squad who can fulfill multiple options at both ends of the pitch. So yeah, I think we'll be fine. Can anyone guarantee that we don't get injuries? No, because no one can guarantee that. This is the contact sport at the end of the day. But as I say, we'll come on to injuries in a minute. I just want to put the alternative thought across from someone who got in touch, Kenny Oak. As I say, what's the saying? You can please some of the people some of the time, but not all the people all of the time. It was a lame transfer window, and I'm confident we don't survive this season, sadly. Letting Pelly go the way they did, Gary Sweet and David Wilkinson should be ashamed of themselves. The last bit, he's not actually gone yet, Kenny. He's only gone out on loan. They will bring him back, and however it is that he leaves this club, he'll leave the club in the right way.
I don't agree with that at all. I don't think it's been a lame transfer window. We've gone out there, we've added some, really good young talent. But there's always that faction of football supporters that no matter what happens, what you do, are negative. And that's not what we need at the club at the moment. We need to be positive, and as we said earlier, it's not all going to be fixed all at once. And there's no point in looking back at the two previous transfer windows and keep on about it. And it's happened. The club have learned from it. They're moving on. So let's look forward and start working together. And there's no reason at all why the players that we've brought in shouldn't help to keep this club in the Championship.
Yep, I would agree with that. Lighten up a bit, Kenny.
It's a surprising point of view, because I think that what we've heard consistently over everyone is that they reference those two previous windows and that they weren't spending the money. They've spent loads of coin in this transfer window. They've flashed the cash and they've been bold and they've been aggressive. They've tried to get Richard Coney for 7 million. 4 million up front. They've tried to, and so they have spent the money. So I wouldn't subscribe to that point of view either. They've gone out and they've got people that they wanted, not people that they could just pick up, or people that weren't wanted. They've taken Wigan's best player. They've taken AOK's best player. They've tried to get Wickham's best player. They've done really well.
If you're looking at it, these are all bright young talents, and we wouldn't have been the only club in for them. I can think of sides in the Championship that would kill to get some of that talent. And we've got them. They've come to Luton. So let's just get behind them and give them the chance, and not judge them before they've even kicked a ball for us, or they've played one game for us.
Yep, that's the views of you guys on the transfer window and whether you think we'll stay up or not. General consensus, good transfer window. Yes, there is certainly an element of a position that could be filled again in the summer, but most people are more confident that we can stay up than they were at the start of it. Just want to finish with a couple more questions. There were a lot of comments and questions and things, so we'll do this again in the international break as well. So if we haven't got round to your question for this one, just got to wait a month and we'll do it again. But I do want to touch on injuries, and someone's asked about Tom Lockyer. It's the same sort of thing, so we'll bring it all into one. Mando Matthews has got in touch with us. Hey guys, just to say, love the podcast. I keep up with it on YouTube whenever I can. Sadly, can't get to Kenilworth Road to watch home game, but hopefully I will do one day. My question is, the past couple of seasons, there's been so much asked of the defenders, whether it be the dreaded three at the back, which I personally never ever want to see again. I subscribe to that. Or being up against the strikers in the Premier League. Do you guys think that's been an impact on the team as a whole at the moment? I ask this because it always seems to be the defenders that are injured. Started to worry now that because of all that it's a mental as well as a physical with them now, because I feel we've got too used to losing, especially away from home. We'll take the away from home bit out of that, Manda, in the hope that that draw at Sheffield Wednesday has changed all of that. The formation with regards to injuries, I'm a massive subscriber to this. I've mentioned it however long. That three in the back was just an absolute. He was asking for trouble. Not just the three at the back, but the three at the back defending as high up the pitch as what we did, with no pace whatsoever. If I refer you back to Reece Burke's injury, it was chasing, I think it was Bayo in the derby, and he stretched his groin, going full pelt to try and keep up with the guy from the halfway line. Won the tackle, got up, and his groin was immediately gone. Gabe Osho was another one whose muscle went chasing a guy back from the halfway line. Amari Bell against Aston Villa last season was exactly the same thing. They were being asked to do something that they could not do. The three at the back, not necessarily that, but defending so high up the pitch against world-class operators with pace, every time you chase them back, every single part of their body was going to be stressed and strained to a point. And if they're doing that in the match, they have to be doing that in training. So they're doing that 7 days a week or 6 days a week, however many it is. I think Matt Bloomfield's formation will be so much better for the defenders, which is why I'm kind of okay that we've let Tom Holmes go, because I don't think that just because Reece Burke's always injured or Ted Mengi's injured now, I don't think that when they come back they'll naturally get injured again. Reece might, that's his body, that's just how he is. I don't think Ted Mengi will be a constantly injured person in this, because they're now in a shape that they don't have to chase strikers from their own box to the other box. They don't have to run from the halfway line back to our box. They're in a much more settled position. There's more of them in terms of there's a shield, there's two fullbacks alongside them as opposed to wing backs that are right up the pitch. So yeah, Amanda, I agree. I think the formation just wasn't a contributory factor to all of these injuries, but I would be amazed if a number of them wasn't down to the amount of high intensity work that they were being asked to do in that formation.
I think it's an element of that. I did actually write a feature piece on this about the injuries.
I knew I was going to tee you up for that.
So you can go to Lutonia.com and there's a feature piece about the injuries. So they suggested a couple of reasons why they think that might happen. And they spent a lot of money actually over the summer and the end of last season, over the summer, to correct some of the pitches at the Brace because they were too loose and the weather didn't help and they were cutting up and there was a lot of twists and muscle injuries because of that. I'm not saying it's all down to that, but it's one good reason. So when at the point that I was told that we hadn't signed any players in the transfer window and people were going, well, they're not spending any money, but they are, and they were always spending it on behind the scenes infrastructure stuff to improve that. So there's that element of it, but I don't want to repeat myself because we've done this ad nauseum throughout the season. I hated that formation three at the back because it left us so light in midfield and teams marauded through the middle of us. And now it seems like we've packed a midfield full of good players that can, and they're athletic, that can get back and do that. I think one of the things perhaps people are saying about the light in central midfield is they're thinking about who's going to put their foot in, like a Kevin Nichols style. I mean, yeah, I could see that. But the fact you've got more bodies in there for starters is going to condense that space anyway, and that's what happened in the game at the weekend. And Lamine was positionally very astute in that regard. So, I think that the formation didn't help. I mean, going up to a different division, the top division, clearly was a struggle. It's a struggle for everybody. It's a struggle for the top three that went up last season in this current Premier League season. I referenced in the last podcast where Conor Cody was on another football podcast talking about how difficult it is now to get up. They're just monster athletes in the Premier League, and that's why it's such a challenge now to get up and be good. And you almost have to do Nottingham Forest, which is essentially they broke the rules to sign as many players as they could to get in, and they established themselves for a season, and now look where they are. And that was never going to be Luton.
I think, there's more than just one factor in this. There's a few factors. I mean, we're playing three at the back, and as you say, we're playing a high line. It also didn't help that we were playing man-to-man marking as well, with players getting pulled out of position. And also, if you look, players were getting pulled out, and there weren't the players dropping back to cover for them. So it's a number of different things. And then when the player you're marking in the man-to-man system picks the ball up, turns and gone, you're always, as you mentioned, Kev, you're always going to be chasing them. There's going to be strain on your body. It seems now with the current system, we're moving more towards a zonal system, which operates better with four at the back. But also, if you look at the team that's playing, you'll find that if somebody goes forward, somebody will drop back to cover their position. So the players are not going to be caught because, in that previous three-man system with man-to-man marking, the centre-backs were picking the ball up and they were trying to bring it out. But it's very difficult to do that, again, as I said, if you haven't got a covering player dropping back to pick up where you should be. And I just think that the system that the players were asked to play is great if you've got the type of players that can do it. We didn't have that quality, and it's commendable that the previous management thought that we could do it and we coped with it. And I understand why they were trying to do it, because if you look at football, also playing the ball out from the back, it means you keep control of the football. You've got possession. If you've seen the game so far, the difference is if you're kicking it long, the kicking wasn't best at the weekend, but 9 times out of 10, you're going to lose possession straight away and put you on the back foot, because they're just picking the ball off and building, and we're not getting to the second ball like our opposition players had been. We've now got players who can potentially do that, and I'm sure we'll see more of a mix-up with the long ball and with playing it out from the back. But Matt Bloomfield seems to be more keen on being really organised. Everybody knows their job and knows what they're going to do. So if the player behind you is going to go forward, then I'm going to drop back and cover him. That I saw something today which it was about Brian Clough, and it was Mark Crossley, and he was saying that Cloughy thought that there were 2 players for every position, and he always played 4-4-2 because every player was drilled and they knew what they had to do. And I think that's what, I'm not saying Matty Bloomfield will go 4-4-2, but he'll want his players to know their job and know exactly what they've got to do. And I think that's one of the things that they've got to learn, is that this player can do this, that player can do that. I'm talking about when you're in the team and you look at your teammates, they're still getting to know what this one can do, what that one's going to, where this player's going to be when you release the ball and you play it. And as I said earlier, it's going to get better. And I already see signs that it is.
Yep. Just to finish on that matter, the one thing I've noticed in the format Bloomfield games so far, we are playing in more condensed spaces than we did under Rob Edwards. So the distance from back to front is a lot less than it was under Rob. And obviously that leads to covering less ground, which in reality should take an awful lot of workload off of the bodies and should have them a lot, if not fresher, a lot more robust than what they have been. So hopefully we've covered that. Last one, gents, on our YouTube, from Aidan and Ava's World, regular commenter on the podcast. Another great pod as per, guys. I would like to know your thoughts on the future of Tom Lockyer at Luton Town. Even if he does return to football, which we're led to believe he will, does he really have a place in the Bloomfield era? Is he a Bloomfield player? Does he fit the profile? He's not sure. Do you want me to do this one first? I do believe he is a Bloomfield player. I just think he's a defender that can defend in any system, because he's what every defence needs, in that he'll put his head on the ball, he'll put a tackle in. I guess what you mean though is he the ball carrier, comfortable on the ball kind of defender? No, I don't think he is. He would need that alongside him, but I think Mark McGuinness is that and will be that in time. So I can see those two working well together. The caveat is nobody knows how Tom's going to come back.
Yeah, that is the main thing. We just wanted to be healthy for a start. I think he will come back in. He's been talked up by Bloomfield. He's so highly regarded in the club, but now football in general, and even beyond that, in doing all his campaign work for the British Heart Foundation and everything like that. His leadership qualities can't be underestimated. I mean, he pulled Luton through a lot of games in that Championship promotion season when we were just winning 1-0. Yeah, the goals came from Eli and Morris, but at the back he was just a brick wall and would not let anyone get past. And he was a massive contributor. He obviously scored a goal, but in the Sunderland second leg playoff semi-final was a huge player. And he was massively missed. and I think he will come back, and we'll wait and see then, because he's missed a lot of football and his health is the main thing. But I think that there's definitely a coaching role in there somewhere for him if he wants it. I think that he loved the club anyway. I'm sure that those bonds are even strengthened now by the way that he's been treated and the affection that he now has. But yeah, I think he does come back in, and we'll wait and see. We thought it might be this season, but I think it will be next now.
But is he a defender for the Bloomfield era?
Well, we don't know at the moment, do we? It's a simple fact of the matter. If we do.
Tell you what, the
know.
splinters on his ass must be getting deeper and deeper.
We've seen 4 games, and it's a changing fluid situation at the moment. We've just brought in 8 new players, and we'll wait to see how that goes. I think he will be, because in the formation that we're currently seeing, as long as we don't go back to that 3 at the back, sometimes talks about it, but I think we're so tired of it now that I don't think that would be where he would fit best. But I think in a 4, absolutely he is.
Tom is he's a Bloomfield player. I think, to be honest with you, a fully fit Tom Lockyer would be, I think any team in the Championship would want him in their side. And I think, and I honestly believe that if that hadn't happened last season, I think we'd have stayed in the Premier League, to be honest with you. Because, to be honest, Tom is a talisman. It's already been said. He's a leader. He's an organiser. Not the quickest centre-back I've ever seen, but what he did beautifully was he read the game. He was an excellent reader of the game, and his positioning and everything else was first class. So he knew where the danger was going to be. He knew where to go. And not just for himself, he'd be telling his players alongside him, you need to be there, you need to cover. That's where it's coming, that's where it's going. And that's what we missed. You know, even with certain players in the defence being out last season, as I've said, the biggest loss was Tom, because I think the players that came in, if they'd have had Tom alongside them, organising them and playing together, we would have been a lot better. It was, you know, it was such a big miss for us. It's great he's still in and around the club, and I've had people say to me, oh, you know, it's a bit much, you know, him coming back in football. He needs to look after his health and everything else. Well, it's his decision at the end of the day, but it won't be just his decision. He'll have had input from doctors, you know, analysts and health professionals. And if there's the slightest doubt that he couldn't do it, I don't think he'd do it.
No, exactly. And Christian Eriksen, who's seen the same specialist and everything else, he's in a much more energetic team and a much more energetic position on the pitch, and he's coping absolutely fine with it. The other reason why I think Tom will be a Bloomfield player is all Bloomfield will want his centre-halves to do in time is just get the ball and give it to whoever that pivot is in front of him. That's all you need to do. So if he's good on the ball or not, he's just got to get it and give it. And he's perfect at doing that.
The sooner he is back, the better.
Yeah, I think this speaks to a point that you mentioned earlier about how the 3, and the way Edwards wanted it to do, and I've had this from Tom Holmes as well when he was here the last time I spoke to him. The 2 outside centre halves, it was their job to go forward and bring out the ball. I think when it wasn't working, I would go, well, let the defenders defend and let them just do that. But there was no one in front of them because of that extra man in defence that you could pass it to. Marv wasn't playing. Clark was better further forward, and there was just this gaping hole in the middle. And so I think that
just look at
allowing defenders to defend first and foremost, with the players that he's now signed, we've signed a hell of a lot of attacking players in this transfer window. The options going forward on paper are really promising. So let the defenders defend, give it to the players that can do the good stuff.
The clue's in the title, isn't it? Defender, midfielder, attacker. Yeah, if you look at that chance that Elijah should have got a shot away at Oxford, that is kind of an indication of how we're going to play under Matt Bloomfield. And that started at the back, just giving it into Marvellous in the centre of midfield. He then passed it on through Krause, through Clark out to Jones, and then, back to Clark and then up to Eli. That's the kind of football. The back four, because even the fullbacks aren't getting that far forward. I still think in time the left back will do, because that was a real trend of Wickham, but not so much the right back. What will tend to happen and what we'll see when Matt Bloomfield's worked an awful lot with this team, and it might not be until next season, because after this 10-day break, games are absolutely bloody relentless again. But what we will see is the left back goes forward and then the other three shuffle across, so that there's three when we're attacking, so that we're not left exposed. So the right back will be, for the want of a better phrase, a defensive fullback, and the left back with Alfie will be a much more progressive left back. He'll go and form part of the midfield when the ball's on the other side, and all of the kind of things that you see the modern craze of managers doing. But in terms of Tom, just get the ball, give it to Marvellous or Lamine or whoever that may be. Job done. And he'll be very good at that.
And Marv's talent at that is very severely underestimated, I think. Everybody goes, he just passes it short, but he keeps it ticking quite very effectively. They're only short passes, but they're to the player in the space who can do the business and get people Luton on the front foot.
And they don't slow the game down, which is really, really important, because as we saw against Millwall, every time the ball went out of play, they just got back into their defensive shape. And we could still be there right now trying to break them down, and probably wouldn't have done it, let's be fair. That's almost it for this episode of the podcast, but I started it by saying that we've got the outgoing Trust chairman, Tony Murray, alongside us. Tony, it was a sad day on Sunday when you announced it to the world that you're stepping down after 2 spells as Trust chairman spanning more than 20 years. I obviously knew you from day one. We worked together right at the start of the Trust. Like yourself, I parted away from it and came back once you became chairman. You asked me to come back on board, and I did. It's about the only time I've listened to you, to be quite honest with you, in that time, but I did.
You definitely don't when I say it's your round, Kev.
No, sorry, what did you say? No, still not. It's still not going in. Obviously, you told us at a board meeting last Thursday that you were stepping down for health reasons, and obviously that's more important than absolutely anything. But the floor is yours, just to address the members. We've sent it around on email, we've announced it, and everything else. We'll announce your successor in the coming days. Obviously, we'll give you time for your resignation to hit home. But there's plenty of people out there who aren't Trust members who might not have got that statement, so here's a chance to address those.
I don't know where that time has gone. It's been such a... It's like a flash, the 20 years. From the moment that I saw on the old message board about us having all those who wanted to help get down to the brickies on this date, and we had a 9-hour meeting. That's where I first met Gary Sweet, and let's make no bones about it, Gary was the brains of the operation. The supporters of this club owe so much to Gary, but he's like everybody. He's not perfect, and I've been lucky in that I've had the opportunity to work with him, to support him, and on occasion defend him. That was a long meeting, and
should probably say to the younger viewers what the origin of it was for, because there's younger fans that have just known good times, I would imagine, but it wasn't always like that.
No, it wasn't like that. And there was a guy who had become quite notorious, and they did a deal with the Watson Chalices, who owned the club at the time, and this guy basically paid a fiver for the club, but he took all the debts from the club.
You could name him John Gurney.
John Gurney, yeah. I was going to say his name, but he kept posting things at night, all sorts of rubbish, and it was all about building a new stadium on stilts over the motorway, and having a Formula One trick, and we were scratching our heads and whatever, because we'd already gone down and protested about these new people, and because Mick Harford and Joe Kinnear had been fired. And we basically knew that this guy was just in it to take what he could out of it, because there was Junction 10 with that plot of land there, which had been earmarked for a stadium, but he wanted to get his hands on that land. And we were all of the same mind. Nobody is going to destroy our football club. Nobody. And we all came together. Eventually, we got him out. And what had happened was, and if you watch that documentary, Trouble at the Top, with About It, there was an outstanding debt, if I remember, of about 11 million quid. And there was a guy called Nick Lloyd, who got in touch with the Watson Charities and found out about this debt, debenture, and they transferred it over to the trust. And what we were able to do, because John Kearney hadn't done his due diligence, he owed this money, which meant because we own this company now called Hatters Holdings, we could go in and call in the debt, which meant the club would have to go into administrative receivership. And as I said, mentioned Nigel Conroy. He was desperate. He said, please let me be the one to go in and give the letter into the club. And we did it and Gurney wasn't there. And we went in, and I don't think, if you remember Cherry Newbury, and I don't think I've ever known a company that was so pleased to go into administrative receivership. So we did that, and they phoned Gurney. Gurney was on the phone, and we were laughing because it came back to us that Gary Sweet was the spawn of the devil, and all of this. And if he had to walk away from Luton Town, he'd make sure there was nothing to walk away from. And that night was really good, because we were in the old boardroom, we were eating pizza. You remember that, Kev? That was a good night. And then it going on from that, once we do that, we had to have a lot of negotiation with the Football League. And I remember being on calls with Gary Sweet to the Football League, and us taking the club into receivership for the right reasons, but that didn't interest the Football League. We'd done this to say, oh, no, very, very frustrating. But, it worked out. I mean, as I said, I've got lots of good memories. We got to the stage where we decided we were going to have a public meeting, and we're going to get this speaker in and that speaker in. And they decided that they wanted somebody to... an ordinary supporter to get up and give a speech, and I was obviously nobody wanted to do it. And I'd had a few beers, and it came round, and I was looking at people and thinking, "No one wants to do this." And I thought, "Oh, bugger it, I'll do it."
So what
somebody do?
What you're saying is all of this 20 years is down to Dutch courage and 9 hours in the brickies.
Not quite. Not quite. Let me. But afterwards, it was like when the following day and was sobered up, I thought, oh my God, what have I done? Oh God, I've got to talk in front of people. I've not only got to do that, I've got to write a speech. And I thought, I can't turn around and say, no, I'm not going to do it. I can't back out. I can't lose face. So I thought, we had the day of the meeting, and I take all through it. It was like I was so nervous. But when we got into Kenilworth Road, and we were sitting on the pitch, and I looked up, and there was cameras from Sky Sports, there was BBC, there was ITV, and I could see all these people from radio stations, and I looked down, and we're all going to talk and whatever. And I suddenly thought, do you know what? I'm here. What am I worried about? Making an arse of myself. And I thought, yeah, why should I worry about that? Nobody knows me, nobody expected me. And I thought, do you know what? If anybody's going to get on TV, it's going to be me. And I just went for it. And one of the things that I remember coming out afterwards, and people all sitting on the stand and everything. And when the meeting had finished, there were people trying to grab me. I'll never forget this. Gary came over to me and he put his arms around me. He just went, I love this guy. And I thought, okay, fair enough. And then it was like a couple of weeks later, there's Nigel Conroy who said to me, we've got something to ask you, Tony. Well, we all thought we found our chairman. And I went, yeah, who's that? And he said, you. And I thought, all right, okay. But I've enjoyed it all, you know. All the different people that have put their input in. And, you know, if you go on Luton Outlaws, you'll see people like Philosophical Pointing, posting your thing. Jimmy P is another one. Those two wrote our constitution between them, and a lot of these people have been very, very good friends. I think, as people know, the reason why I got involved a second time was because when we had the fight with J10, and Pinkney and what have you, and I joined the committee then, and that through it all, we worked very closely with Loyal Luton Supports Club. It was quite funny because we definitely had a two-pronged attack. We were like the official nice boys trying to do it the right way, and Loyal Luton was a guerrilla team, that went in and like SEAL Team 6, I suppose, would go in and cause mayhem and whatever. And I wouldn't change any of it. And as I put in my closure, yes, for the past couple of years, my health hasn't been the best, and I've had a few issues, and it's meant that I couldn't contribute the way I'd want. And I have to say this to my fellow board members. They were all so supportive and really cared about me and my health. And I think they put up with a lot from me because, again, I wasn't pulling my wealth. Yes, I could go on the radio. I could take the piss out of Andy Collins and whatever. Because, as you know, if you're like that, there are times when you're all right and you can hide what's going on, and I can do that. But they supported me, and when I announced that I was stepping down at our last board meeting on Thursday, I was genuinely touched, and it brought a tear to my eye that they all seemed so disappointed that I was doing it, and but I just couldn't. And as part of me, I felt guilty that I wasn't contributing, and they all work so hard. They really, really do. They put so much effort into what they do, all on a voluntary basis, I should say. Supporters have got to remember this, that these people are there. I mean, if you think you can do a better job, stand up and do it. Don't just carp. We've got some really good people on board. I mean, you've only got to look at the podcast. You two guys do a fantastic job. The reason why I wanted to get Kevin back involved was because of that media thing. I knew he would help me, and I knew he would support me and work. But it was also good for him because it gave him that. You won't deny that, will you? It gave you that experience to step up and do this, and then. You've supported us, James, with what's going on, and also with your Lutonian website. You've done that. You've done a really nice article on me at the weekend, but I have to say, I'm not walking away. I've said it. I'm not walking away. I'm stepping down.
He says he's going to be on here a lot more if you want to see him. By
yeah.
It's a downside to everything.
And that's part of the reason why I came away from this, because I really enjoy doing this. But I've had some wonderful messages and whatever, with my health problems. The amount of people that have offered to buy me a beer, I think I can add alcoholism to that if I take them up on that. I've had some lovely comments. I thank you all for that. And like I said on my own social media, I'm going to be at games. I'm going to be there. If you come up and say hello, it'd be great to see you and have a chat and everything else. But I firmly believe that it's time for somebody else to take us on, whoever that person is. They'll have my full support. So I will say, to everybody, thank you. It's been an honour and a privilege. I wanted to do something because I was never good enough football-wise to play for this wonderful, wonderful football club. But the least I could do was try and do what little I could do to make sure it's here for future supporters. So I thought, thank you all.
I'll say it on camera now that if you're a Luton Town fan, however long you've been a Luton Town fan for, you owe this guy an awful, awful amount of gratitude, because he's seen the trust through some choppy waters. He's seen the football club through some even choppier waters. And thankfully, he's been the bridge between the trust and 2020 for the entire existence of 2020. He worked tirelessly himself. He does himself a disservice. Doesn't want any gratitude for it. He's been the face of the trust for so long. And me personally, he's always got my back. And that's the reason why I came back on the trust board. I wouldn't have done it for anyone else. He's an absolute legend of a human being. And we're sorry that you've had to step down because of your health, mate, but we wish you all the best going forward. But on behalf of every Luton fan out there, well done, mate. And thanks very much for all of your work.
Thank you. It means so much, but there's nothing special about me. I'm sure if it hadn't been me, it'd been somebody else, but I thank you. I really do appreciate it. Thank you.
It wasn't though. It was you. And we're all eternally grateful. And that's me being nice to him over. Next time he's on the podcast, I'm going to start taking the piss out of him again, to be quite honest, because I can't be nice too often. But absolute
Mr.
legend. But absolute legend.
Yeah, and he's promised to buy me a pint as well, so that's even better, because I've never seen him open his wallet.
I deny all knowledge of that. I must have been asleep or something.
But yeah, well done, Tony. Absolutely brilliant shift, and big shoes to follow for the next person. As I say, we'll announce that within the next week or so once it's all determined and everything else. That's it for this episode of the podcast. We've split this one up into 2 parts because it's been a lengthy podcast, but it's the first deep dive that we've done of 2025. We hope that you've enjoyed it, and we'll be back as always for a preview of the Sunderland game at the usual time this weekend. Do keep all your comments coming in. We do keep on reading them. Don't send Tony any more nice ones though. He's had enough of them to last him a lifetime. Send some bad ones in. It's only fair that we get balanced opinions. No, I'm only joking. Send all your comments in to Tony. He does deserve all of them. That is it for this episode of the podcast. Thanks as always to the Barber Club and to the Lower Level in Luton for hosting our studio, to Sean Grant and the Wolfgang for our intro music, and to Ed Smith Creative for all the designs that you see on set. Until next time, that was a right old January, wasn't it? Come on, you atters.
I believe our supporters are the best supporters in the country.
I love this town. I love this town. I love this town. You know what I love about this town is actually you. Everyone in it has got this massive soul.
We're Luton people.